Did you want to go to Reason Rally 2016 on June 4th and can't afford it? Do you want your group to be a part of the biggest atheist and free thought rally in 2016? Now's your chance. Reason Rally 2016 is looking for groups that want to come to the Reason Rally for a great rate. Reason Rally is working with rallybus.net, your online crowdsourced event bus sharing, to bring you to the Reason Rally and to take you home. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally and sign up today. We need bus captains and organizers to set up groups of 40 or more that can meet up in major cities and ride share. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally to set yours up today.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Havoc and Chaos Live. Weekly look at some of the batshittery we call news and the pals, pundits, and other up-to-wild people, myself included, claim to know what is really going on in our world. I am an atheist, a lesbian, and I have bipolar disorder, among other things. Therefore, hate of any kind is not welcome in my world. I am opinionated, and my impulse control went out the window months ago, so I say what I feel. In other words, stupid smart people piss me the fuck off. Be forewarned, I'm highly excitable, and if you're easily offended by four-letter words or longer, you may want to go and listen to something else. So, let's recap a bit, to kind of understand where I'm going with all this, as it's really not your standard anti-vax diatribe. 1. Kent Hovind and Mary Tucko catch my eye. I had a little help with that. It's your standard anti-vax bullshit, thrown in for good measure, anti-government, anti-establishment stance. We learn about the Cutter incident surrounding the polio vaccine. 2. Hovind and Tucko are both religious nuts, which got me to thinking about SOCUS, separation of church-state. 3. During that time period of putting the Hovind-Tucko piece together, a stink was raised with the documentary Vax being included, then pulled by Tribeca. Regretfully, another anti-vax celebrity comes to the fore in Robert De Niro. 4. Andrew Wakefield, the writer of said documentary, cries persecution and censorship. Although it does not appear to be religious in nature, his whining, that is, it is related to the First Amendment. And that issue itself reminds me of Genesis 2 Church and MMS. And then finally, last week, I sort of kind of briefly introduced Jim Humble. He's the creator of both MMS and Genesis 2 Church. And hopefully in that time I was able to show that his intentions were not so humanitarian as he likes to make them out to be. So this week we're going to take a look at homeopath and one of the infamous bishops of his church, Kerri Rivera. She's the author of the book Healing the Symptoms known as Autism, which basically touts dosing your child orally with this bleaching agent and anally as well to, quote, recover your child from autism. If you remember some of the horror stories from last week, that's just fucking ludicrous. What we do know of Rivera comes from self-reporting or what is stated by others. She really has not denied such attributions. The following is an example of the direct she was taught. This has been noted by writers such as David Gorski and many, many other science writers.
When people leave here, they really know how to use MMS for all things. Skin diseases of all kind, colon problems, how to regenerate the liver, how to treat brain cancers, how to treat babies and pregnant women, and how to treat animals from mice to elephants. You will be personally taking MMS while here, spraying your skin with powerful solutions of MMS, but won't hurt you. Spraying other skin and hair. You will learn to use sprays, bath, IV solutions, MMS gas, soak the feet, and most importantly, the new protocols that in the country of Malawi have cured more than 800 people of HIV, plus 40 cancer cases, 50 of feet and leg numbers, 3 heart disease cases, 13 diabetes cases, and many other diseases and problems.
Sounds very much like the 2010 newsletter I mentioned last week. That's what she was taught. It's what she is teaching others through her book and lectures that's really scary. In a very polished Project Camelot interview from 2015, she talks of how autism was not initially on Humble's radar for MMS use. So this bullshit, this is all her. Which is why my focus is on her and, as we shall see, her cohort, Andres Kalker. One point to note. As I suspected last week, Rivera has been distancing herself from Humble.
In an interview with NBC Chicago, Rivera distanced herself from Humble and said her only interest was in helping children.
As to some of what she teaches people, this is what she said.
Autism is treatable, it's avoidable, and I believe that it's curable, she said. As the symptoms go away, the diagnosis fades as well.
Further on,
if it were so toxic, people would be dropping like flies, and there are no deaths related to chlorine dioxide, Rivera said.
Now I want you to keep that last thought in mind, please. She already had a biomed clinic in 2006 when she was introduced to MMS, so her mindset to accept this stuff was already there. Not knowing her child's status other than, quote, he was a mess, end quote, or what the family's trials or tribulations may have been concerning a autism diagnosis, I can only guess that it was one of desperation. In other words, clinging to anything that gave hope of a, quote, normal child. I can rightly understand that, but she discounts science and all it has to offer. She discounts what I noted last week, that these children are unique in their own ways. It's us that needs to understand.
Kerri, thank you for inviting me. I've heard your name over the last 5 years quite often, and of course, it's nice to now have the opportunity to chat with you and talk a little bit about how we've sort of furthered the work that Jim Humble has started. And of course, he did many, many things. And autism was one of the things that really wasn't on his, wasn't really in his agenda at that time. And so I really didn't find anything when I was looking on the internet for autism. And I'd found this chlorine dioxide, but with a doctor in Mexico who was working with it. And so I really didn't know much about it and started to look into it. And it sounded like, you know, the miracle cure. It kills virus, kills bacteria, takes care of everything. So I already had a biomedical clinic in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'd had it since 2006. And we did a lot of alternative treatments, which alternative meaning to the mainstream where they think just drug them and put them into institutions. So the biomedical community is still, you know, groups of doctors and homeopaths and other practitioners that believe that diet and other things really can help with the autism diagnosis. And among them, you know, we're doing many of those types of treatments at the clinic: hyperbarics, diet, supplementation, chelation, things like that.
Further along in this interview, Rivera tells a bit of history and how she justifies the torture of her child. Regretfully, this clip is a little bit long, so it won't be included tonight, but it will be in my YouTube presentation. Notice, if you do listen to this, notice the Jenny McCarthy type trope of refrigerator mama.
Anyway, so I started using it for my own son, and within a week, I saw incredible results. Things that, you know, having worked with my son for many years, doing lots of different treatments and diets, he had gotten much better, but he still was light years away from where he is today after we've been on the protocol for 5 years. But of course, even in the first week, the results were undeniable. He was so much different right away. Sure, yeah, I had 2 children. And my second child was born in 2000. He was extremely bright. You know, he was light years ahead of his neurotypical older brother. Even from the day he was born alert. He was just very, very, very alert automatically and smiley and really integrated. Really, he was phenomenally smart right away. You could just tell he was you know, firing on all eight pistons. So by the time we went to his second vaccine, his 2-year vaccine, he came back different. And it was noticeable because, he was no longer having eye contact. He was no longer talking. He was flapping. It was in a very short period of time. And we talked about this over the years. My sister had gone away for the summer, so she didn't see Patrick from the time, like the beginning of July. Then she came back sort of like the third week of August. And Patrick had his 2-year vaccine, which was the 5-in-1, on the 13th of August. And she came back somewhere around the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th of August, something like that. And he was different, running back and forth from the TV to the door, back and forth, and squealing and flapping, and again, no eye contact. And he was a child that was really connected and interested in the surroundings. And of course, he had many, many words, and all that was starting to fade. He still had some words up until about 2.5. And of course, you don't know what's happening. All the doctors are just saying, oh, he's a spoiled 2-year-old. He's, all these kind of things that would never be that, he might have autism or a vaccine injury or something like that. So anyway, life goes on, and, we're just having a terrible life, and he's not sleeping, and he has chronic diarrhea, and he's drooling, and, he's a disaster.
So were you a medical professional when this happened of any
kind? I was a mother. I was just a mother. That was really all. I mean, I played tennis. I was a mother. That wasn't my thing. And of course, you're fast forwarded, and the autism mothers, the biomedical mothers, are some of the most well-read people you ever, and the fathers too, of course, well-read people you ever want to speak with. They become experts on anything that's going to help their children, whether they're therapies or their biomedical interventions for healing what we find in labs and their symptoms to be illnesses. So no, I didn't. And of course, all that sort of came into play.
I've spoken on this issue before, so I won't rehash this too much. Your child is not damaged or injured by force-feeding a poison and shoving it up the ass. You are guilty of abuse. You are using Pavlovian conditioning to avoid behaviors that you do not understand, and that is barbaric. I could go on for 2 hours just on that point alone. Now, while Gorski goes into much more detail, we do learn this concerning Kerri Rivera.
We learned that Kerri Rivera was trained as a DN practitioner, which stands for Defeat Autism Now, even though she is not a doctor, and charged by Bernie Rimlin, who was a topic unto himself, to translate the DN protocols into Spanish and spread them throughout Latin America with a preacher of woe. She's also the director of a clinic, which I have mentioned, even though she is apparently not a doctor or a healthcare professional.
Now, although the DN protocols and the subject of Bernie Rimlin is beyond what I want to present, I may at some point dive into that subject. I have a sneaking feeling that Rimlin alone will be a very, very deep rabbit hole. As she states in her numerous interviews and yada yada yada, she is just a mom. While she may be well read and, quote, knows her child, her understanding of science as it relates to the use of MMS is pitiful. Like Humble, Rivera and her apologists blatantly ignore science that counters their wishful thinking. A good example is she totally ignores the FDA warnings. And not just the FDA, as I noted last week. Or she twists the science to fit her conclusions. Her apologists as well. A good example is the so-called Luber study, or the NATEC study. Many of your MMS apologists do the same thing. They present these studies as evidence for its efficacy, disregarding the protocols of the said study. So, in other words, it doesn't quite say what you think it does. Today was just basically a brief overview of Kerri Rivera's shit. Honestly, I could spend hours and not even delve into her flawed science. The shit I've read confirms my belief that Rivera is a sadist. She takes pleasure into watching parents inflict this pain on a child. She's a sadist of the cruelest kind. It's harsh, maybe, but in all likelihood, it's honest. It really makes me wonder if the rumor, and I don't like to spread rumors, is true. Did her damn husband finally wise up? Next time, we're gonna go a little deeper into Kerri Rivera. Some of the contradictions in her book, her willful stupidity regarding science. We'll also contemplate whether the use of MMS is another form of Scientology. And if we have time, the dreaded rope worm. Okay, I lied about the science, but I just had to, as I actually did find some new to me information about the rope worm. So if I can put something together coherently, we may touch on that. As I was telling Deb the other day, the past 3 weeks have been a reaction, a refutation, if you would like, of one simple meme. Anti-vaxxers drive me gonzo, even more so than theists. And it's shit like this. It's people like Kerri Rivera that reminds me of why science denialism as a whole is a cult. The mindset is the same. And no amount of legitimate science is going to change their minds. Whether it be anti-vaxxers, climate change denialists, GMO denialists, or creationists. It's the same, and it is a cult. So, until next time.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner. I'm proud to be.
What happens when you're a non-believer and find yourself in the Canadian Bible Belt? If you're like me, you gather some fellow heathens and take to the airwaves. So we invite you to take a left to the valley every Sunday at 1 p.m. on CIVL 101.7 FM. Follow us on lefttothevalley.com. Atheists, skeptics, and Humanist Radio, no God required.